This is a story so intense it refuses to let go, drifting through the still air of a forgotten frontier ranch. It rises where broken trust and buried courage collide. It all begins with something almost invisible, a single choice that grows into a fight for survival and justice. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Elin Rowe was only 17. Her mother was gone, her kin scattered or silent, and there was no one left to shield her from the cruelty of the man who claimed the title of stepfather. The ranch that had once meant warmth and safety had turned into a place of captivity. The ropes dug mercilessly into her skin. Her wrists throbbed as the rough hemp tore at her flesh. Her legs were pulled tight against the splintered rails of an old fence, pinning her helpless beneath the brutal midday sun. Each breath came sharp and shallow. Every heartbeat echoed with fear. She was far too young to grasp how her life had fallen into such darkness. Too young to stand against a man hardened by years of resentment and control. Brack Holt struck her when she refused to sign away the ranch papers. He spat curses when her tears fell. He told her she was nothing of value, that she existed only as a burden, that without him, she was useless. His words cut deeper than the ropes ever could. Every blow left more than marks on her body. They carved wounds into her spirit. Elin felt her girlhood slipping away, torn from her piece by piece, replaced by dread and silence. She had trained herself to swallow her sobs, to bite her lips, until they bled to trap her screams deep inside. But this day broke her. Her voice ripped through the open air in raw desperation. She cried for help, even though she no longer trusted that anyone would answer. Her throat burned, her voice splintered, yet she kept calling out, clinging to the faint hope that anyone might hear. The sun showed no mercy. Sweat and blood streaked her skin. The brittle grass around her whispered of death. The shadow of her stepfather haunted her thoughts, a reminder that the suffering would never end unless she surrendered everything her mother, Nora Rowe, had left behind. Elin shut her eyes, remembering her mother's smile, the ranch as it once was filled with laughter and light. Now there was only dust rope bruises and the cruel laughter of a man who fed on her pain. Her body shook with exhaustion. Her resolve wavered at the edge of collapse. The ranch was slipping through her fingers. Her future was being stolen before it had a chance to begin. She was still a child, forced into violence and despair, bound by the greed of a man who had never truly been family. Her cries rolled across the empty fields, sending birds scattering from the fence posts. The wind carried her voice beyond the ranch land, but would it reach anyone who still cared? Would it reach someone brave enough to confront the cruelty that held her captive? Elin's lips trembled as her strength drained away. She whispered one last plea to the open sky, unsure if it would ever be heard. Her heart pounded, not with hope, but with the fear of being erased. And the question lingered in the heat. If no one came now, how long could she survive in the hands of a man who would take her land, her dignity, and her life without hesitation? Then the stillness of the afternoon shattered. Hoofbeats cut through the silence. Wade Ashcroft had been riding across the dry flats, another long day beneath a wide blue sky, when something reached his ears. At first it sounded like wind playing tricks, but then it came again. A cry. Not an animal's call, but the raw, broken voice of a young woman in pain. Wade pulled his horse to a halt. His brow tightened as he turned toward the sound. There was weight in that cry, desperation no decent man could ignore. Not if he had any soul left. He urged his horse forward, slow and wary. Grass crunched beneath the hooves, dust hanging thick in the hot air. As he drew nearer, his gaze sharpened, and then he saw her. Elin Rowe. a young girl bound mercilessly to the fence, her arms tied tight, her face smeared with dust and tears. Bruises darkened her skin, and deeper still were the wounds of betrayal etched into her eyes. For an instant, Wade Ashcroft's chest seized so hard it stole his breath. He had witnessed suffering across the frontier, men beaten friends, buried families shattered by hard fate. But this was different. This was not an ambush, not outlaw violence, not the cruelty of the land. This was harm chosen freely. This was evil by a man's own hand. At the sound of the horse, Elin lifted her head. Her eyes widened, shining with terror and a thin, fragile thread of hope. Her lips moved without sound. She pleaded through that broken look alone. Wade swung down from his horse and stepped closer. The faded red scarf at his neck fluttered in the breeze as he knelt to her level. His voice came out rough yet firm. "You're safe now. I've got you." Her shoulders trembled relief, battling fear of what might still come. Wade drew his knife, the blade flashing in the sun, and sliced through the ropes. Each strand snapped with a harsh crack like chains giving way. Elin flinched as blood rushed back into her hands, but she swallowed her cries. She refused to appear weak, not before a stranger who had already shown her more mercy than anyone in years. When the final rope fell, Wade steadied her with a solid grip. She leaned into him shaking, and in that silent moment, he made a vow he did not speak aloud. No man with honor could turn away now. Yet just as relief began to settle, the land itself seemed to pause. Somewhere beyond them, a shadow still lingered, the kind that never releases its hold easily. Was this rescue truly the end, or merely the opening of something darker? Though the ropes were gone, fear clung to Elin like a second skin. Her hand shook as she tried to stand. Wade kept an arm firm around her, guiding her toward the horse. "Easy," he said calmly, as one might soothe a frightened animal. "Breathe. You're still here, and he won't touch you again, not while I'm standing." Elin wanted to believe him. Her mouth opened, but only a whisper escaped. It was him. "My stepfather. Brack Holt. He wants the ranch. He won't stop." Wade's jaw tightened. He had seen greed rot men before, but there was something especially foul about one who preyed on his own blood. He met Elin's eyes, saw the fear there, and answered without hesitation. "You're not alone anymore. Whatever he thinks he owns, he's wrong." He eased Elin Rowe down with care-brought water and washed the cuts along her arms. His hands were weathered and strong, yet his touch stayed measured, almost gentle. Elin watched him quietly, unable to understand why a stranger showed her more protection than the man who was meant to be family. Night closed in around the house, still but heavy. Elin sat near the fire, wrapped tight in a blanket, its warmth failing to chase away the fear in her eyes. Wade rested against the wall, alert, listening. He carried the look of a man who knew this was not finished, because somewhere beyond the dark windows, Brack Holt still lived, and men like him did not fade quietly. The question pressed in the silence. Would Brack return with greater fury? Or would the hard justice of the frontier finally catch him? The night grew thick over the ranch, restless and warm. Elin remained near the hearth, her blanket pulled close, her gaze still shadowed by dread. Wade stood by the door, arms folded, his attention fixed on every sound outside. He knew men like Brack. Shame never sent them away. It only brought them back. The quiet broke with boots grinding against gravel. Then came the slow, deliberate groan of the ranch gate. Elin stiffened, breath locking in her chest. Wade's hand slid to the pistol at his belt. The door shuddered as Brack's voice tore through the night. "You can't hide her from me, old man. That ranch is mine, same as everything on it ever was. Tears welled in Elin's eyes, but she did not retreat. She stood shaking, yet unyielding, her voice rising from a strength she had never known. "You're lying. My mama left it to me. You'll never take it. Not again." The door slammed open. Brack Holt charged inside, eyes bloodshot, fists clenched, rage pouring off him like heat. He lunged toward Elin, but Wade stepped into his path, solid as seasoned oak. They collided hard. Fists cracked against flesh, boots scraped across the floor. The table overturned, the lantern swung, shadows leaping wild across the walls. Elin pressed herself into the corner, heart hammering, as the fight exploded before her. Brack struck with fury, but Wade slipped the blow and drove a punch that sent Brack staggering. Still he came on, fueled by greed and venom. Wade's face flushed with effort, yet his strength held. His resolve did not bend. Every strike carried more than force. It carried every wrong done to the helpless by men like Brack. The room shook until Wade finally forced him down, pinning him hard to the floor. The pistol skidded away. What remained was raw will. Wade's voice cut low and final. "It's over. You're finished." Elin stepped forward, legs trembling, eyes burning. She looked down at the man who had broken her childhood and spoke with a steadiness he could not crush. "You will answer for what you've done. Not to me. Not to him. To the law." For the first time, fear flickered in Brack Holt's eyes. He knew the truth. On the frontier, a man might outrun enemies, but justice always followed. And now there was nowhere left to run. Would the law of the frontier finally drive Brack Holt to his knees, or did he still have one last trick left to play? Dawn crept slowly over the ranch, brushing the sky with gold and deep red. Brack was no longer the shadow haunting Elin Rose nights. With Wade Ashcroft at her side, the county lawman rode in and took Brack into custody. The proof spoke for itself: the bruises on Elin's arms, the fury that spilled from Brack's own mouth, and the quiet testimony of the dry fence folk who had heard her cries and seen the truth with their own eyes. For the first time in years, Elin felt the weight ease from her chest. The ropes were gone. The fear had cracked. In its place came something she had almost forgotten: hope. Life on the ranch did not soften overnight. Fences needed repair, fields demanded labor, and some nights the silence still pressed hard against her heart. But she was no longer a victim. She was a survivor. And she had Wade, the man who had stood between her and ruin, the man who proved that justice still had a place in the West. Wade stayed on for a time, helping restore what had been broken. He showed her how to ride with steadiness, how to shoot true, and more than anything, how to meet fear without lowering her eyes. Elin, once a frightened 17-year-old, grew into a woman forged by resolve and quiet fire. She carried her scars with pride, not as shame, but as evidence that she had endured. The seasons turned. The ranch found its footing again. Elin ran it with a firm hand, surprising herself with the strength she discovered along the way. Through it all, Wade remained nearby, watching her rise from the ashes of what had tried to destroy her. Their bond deepened without rush, shaped by patience rather than promises. What began as gratitude settled into something lasting and true. It was not a storybook love. It was stronger. Born of hardship and survival, rooted in the simple truth that two souls can find each other even on the harshest ground. And when Elin finally smiled again, it carried both sorrow and light, a smile that said she had been broken but never beaten. Many lives carry their own Brack Holt. Not always a man with fists and rope, but cruelty, greed, or betrayal that weighs heavy all the same. And when the world turns cold, sometimes one steady hand is enough to remind us we are not alone. Elin and Wade's story is more than a frontier tale. It is a reminder that strength is not born of comfort, but of endurance and the courage to stand again. Justice may move slow, but it comes. And when it does, it leaves room for healing, for rebuilding, and for a future earned step by step under a wide western sky. And it was for that same reason that care still lingered in the quiet afterward. Gratitude settled gently in the air, for having endured, for having listened to the land, and for being part of a path that did not end in silence. That shared presence, unspoken, yet deeply felt, carried more weight than words could ever fully explain. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. We appreciate you more than you think. If this tale stirred something deep inside, we invite you to remain part of this frontier of memories. More true stories of honor, compassion, and destiny are waiting for you here. Subscribe, share, comment, and thank you for riding with us today. Aviso legal barra disclaimer. Our content is designed for artistic and entertainment purposes and may reinterpret historical themes using fictional touches. We apply AI tools thoughtfully, only to support production, while keeping human supervision over editing, emotional tone, and narrative coherence. We always comply with regulatory guidelines for AI-based media and avoid deepfake practices or identity manipulation. All supporting components remain legally sourced. Please ask for authorization before sharing or adapting any segment. Your respect makes it possible for us to continue telling meaningful stories.